Ever since the Colts started their bye week, we've been talking about guys that we should pay, guys that we shouldn't pay, guys that we should move on from in the future. We already moved on from one in Shaq. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with all those guys, but we're going to finish that conversation up. There's a list of guys here who are going to be free agents for the Colts in 2024. I think there are a lot of guys they'll move on from. This new regime kind of wanting to get their own guys in here. But I do think some of these guys are guys that we're going to need to bring back. So we'll go through this. This is a pretty lengthy list. I'm getting this information from ProFootballNetwork.com. And we're going to start with Trey Sermon. Now, Trey Sermon's a guy that I could see coming back on the practice squad. He has familiarity with the coach, right? Tyquan was with Trey Sermon there in Philly, and then Trey Sermon comes here when we need him. So, with Evan Holt coming back next year, no telling if Zach Moss is going to be here. I wouldn't be surprised if Trey Sermon comes back here as more of a practice squad role again, but maybe he is the third running back next year as well. We'll see what happens there. Wouldn't be a bad option. Again, the familiarity, for a third running back to come in, you could do a lot worse than Trey Sermon as a third running back. So, I'd be fine with him coming back. The next on this list is Isaiah McKenzie. Isaiah McKenzie's an interesting one, right? Because, again, you could do much worse in terms of wide receiver depth. But Isaiah McKenzie wants to be somewhere where he's going to be able to play real snaps. I don't know if that's going to happen anywhere, but, as a punt returner, he makes me so nervous. Every punt, you have to worry, is he going to muff it? And then once he catches it, and he's running it, or when he's running back kickoffs, is he going to fumble the ball? Right? He's done some good things as a receiver. He's had some good returns also, right? But he has that element that just makes me so nervous. And we have Josh Downs. Like, do we need Isaiah McKenzie here? Somebody that has shown that he can be a bit of a liability. So in my opinion, with what he's probably going to want, probably not bringing Isaiah McKenzie back, but we'll see what happens there. Then another wide receiver here is going to be Juwan Winfrey. And this is going to be an interesting one. He's a restricted free agent. We'll see if the Colts want to bring him back. I assume with some familiarity in the way he plays on special teams, there might be some interest to bring him back. Danny Pinter is going to be another really interesting one. Obviously on the IR all year, but coming off the injury next year, will they want to keep him? In my honest opinion, I think the only way they keep Danny Pinter is somebody that would be on the practice squad. Again, this new regime, this isn't Frank Reich's regime. They're not going to hang with him just because, he's Danny Pinter and he's been here and Chris Ballard drafted him. Like, this regime clearly does not care, right? We just released Shaq. So Danny Pinter, in my opinion, not going to be here. Jack Anderson, a restricted free agent, might be a practice squad player. I don't think that one really matters for us. Tyquan Lewis will be interesting to see what happens there. I think not only with the familiarity, but the production that he normally has. He's pretty good about getting pressure. He's decent in the run game. So Tyquan Lewis is a guy that, I guess it would probably depend on his price, what he would want next year. But I could see Tyquan Lewis being a guy that does come back and stays as a depth piece for this defensive line. Right, and Jacob Martin, we've seen Jacob Martin come in and make some plays this year, both as a pass rusher and in the run game. Gets a decent amount of pressure, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I'm kind of curious as to whether or not they'll want to bring him back. Gennard Avery, another guy that I'm kind of curious about, but I don't think they're going to want to bring him back. We haven't really seen or heard from him very much this season. Taven Bryan might not be a guy that they're willing to bring back. They might try to go find some guys either in the draft or through free agency, maybe undrafted free agents, bring some young guys in, right? At some point, Tommy Ade's got to end up getting into the games. So Taven Bryan probably out. Tony Brown, the only reason he would ever be on this team after this year is going to be special teams. But I would assume, as a depth piece for corner, the fact that we got there this season, they're probably going to look ahead and say, okay, if we get in that situation again, we need to have somebody who can play corner better, even if that means, the special teams role is going to be, slightly downgraded. So we'll see what happens there, but I doubt that Tony Brown ends up being a Colt after this season. And the last one here is Rigoberto Sanchez. And this one could go any way, right? Specialists, like, there's almost no rhyme or reason. It's, really just how much money do they want to allocate? How important is field position to you? And I feel like when you look at it, Rigoberto Sanchez is bombing balls. And I don't know all the details, right? I don't know if there's some directional stuff that he's supposed to be doing and he's not doing it. Honestly, I think he's just out kicking his coverage. And I don't know if that's a him problem or a coverage problem, but he is bombing balls this year. So, in my opinion, I would like Rigoberto Sanchez to come back. I just think we need to get guys who can be better as gunners on the punt team, guys that can get downfield better, guys that can fill their gaps better, right? The special teams has clearly not been what it was when Bubba Ventrone was here. We need to get back to being one of the best special teams units in the league so that we're not giving up short fields and putting defense in the bad spot with that. So again, I think Rigoberto Sanchez is a guy that we should keep. He was great before all the injuries happened, right? He had one season where he was dealing with cancer, had the next season with, I believe it was an Achilles injury last year. So what we've seen from this year seems like he's back to being Rigoberto Sanchez, and I'd like to see him stay here. I think having good specialists is a big deal. We signed Matt Gay to a big contract, for a kicker. These guys are getting paid millions of dollars. So, of course, it's a good contract. But Matt Gay gets the biggest kicker contract ever. Will Rigo get the biggest punter contract ever? I don't know. I don't know if he's at that point, and I don't know if he's that guy to get that contract. The specialist market, I just I don't know enough about it. I just know that Rigoberto Sanchez is one of the better punters in the league, and I'd like him to stay on this team. I think something that helps that situation where you're able to keep Rigoberto Sanchez is the fact that Anthony Richardson's on his rookie deal. We mentioned that so much, and I think that's something that comes into account here. And being able to have a guy that can flip the field for you if your young quarterback is having some struggles, could really help things out. So, in summary, through everything we've talked about over the last 2 weeks, what we're looking at right now, when we started doing all this, we had right around $77-78 million in cap space. With Shaq being gone, we're looking at right around $90 million in cap space going into free agency next year. If we move on from Braden Smith in the offseason, we would end up at $106 million in cap space. Okay, so if you take those numbers into account, somewhere between 90 and 106, we're paying Michael Pittman Jr. If the price is right, you pay Zach Moss, right? Obviously, with Jonathan Taylor, it'll be interesting to see how that situation goes. But I like the idea of creating a Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt kind of situation with Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss. All right. And then Gardner Minshew, again, if the price is right and he wants to come back to be the backup, I'd have him back as a backup, but you can't overspend for that. Kenny Moore, got to bring him back. He cannot leave the building. 100%, you have to have Kenny Moore. Julian Blackmon, with the extra money, I think Julian Blackmon, a good idea to go ahead and re-sign him. Okay, and then all these guys that we talked about before, Rigo, you definitely bring back. Tyquan Lewis, possibly coming back. Juwan Winfrey, possibly coming back. Trey Sermon, possibly coming back. Then guys I'm fine with moving away from: Isaiah McKenzie, Danny Pinter, Jack Anderson. Jacob Martin, we'll see what happens there. They might bring him back as a depth piece. Grenard Avery, Taven Bryan, and Tony Brown all gone. So that's how I see it working out. It'll take a decent portion of the Colts cap, right? If we move on from Braden Smith, have 106. I think after signing all those guys, we'd end up with right around like 30-35 million, something like that. And then you start talking about what else would we do in free agency. And I'm looking through the free agent tracker right now on SpoTrack. I've been looking at it, trying to get an idea of who we might attack next year. And there are a lot of names, man. I could just go through the wide receiver list and make, video after video. There are a lot of really good players that are going to be free agents next year. So, going to keep looking at the options and seeing what we might do to free up more space. Because again, there are a lot of players out there. We'll see what happens, and I'll have more videos for that as time goes on. So make sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you get notified when all those videos come out, or any news and updates. I get them all to you as soon as possible. So again, make sure you subscribe with notifications on so you get notified when those videos do come out. And with that said, as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go Colts.